Eyewitness News presents Newsmakers with your hosts Jayne and Bugda and Andy Mehalshick.
Hello and welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Jayne Bugda along with Andy Mehalshick. The Family Service Association of Northeast PA is our topic today. They've been in our community for many years. We'll learn more about them and about their upcoming family conference on suicide. We'll introduce you to our guests, and our discussion will begin when this edition of Newsmakers returns right after this. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Jayne Bugda along with Andy Mehalshick. Suicide prevention, creating a community of hope and healing. That's the name of an upcoming family seminar hosted by the Family Service Association of Northeast PA, and our topic today. We are joined by what I like to call a powerhouse panel. They've all been with us before, and they're knowledgeable in this field, so please welcome Kathy Wallace, the president of Northeast Suicide Prevention Initiative, Denise Carey, who's the Suicide Prevention Coordinator for the Wilkes-Barre Veterans Medical Center, and Michael Zimmerman, who is the CEO for the Family Service Association of Northeast PA. Thank you all for being here. We have an important topic. We're opening the dialogue on suicide. It's the topic of the upcoming conference. And before we get into the discussion, I want people to be reacquainted with the Family Service Association of Northeast PA, the people who bring us Helpline. Mike, tell us a little bit about the organization.
We've been around for a long time. We've been around for 120 years. This is our 120th anniversary, actually, for the organization. And through the years, we've shifted our focus. We initially started out housing homeless women and children back in the era of the mines when, when perhaps a husband was killed and women generally weren't working outside of the home at that point. So we would provide assistance to them. Through the years, we grew into more of a professional approach as a food charity, so to speak, or a shelter charity, doing professional counseling and professional case work. And then, of course, we shifted with one of the more significant natural disaster events in the valley. In 1972, Helpline was created in response to Hurricane Agnes. And that program has grown tremendously through the years. We were initially set up just to do assistance for flood victims and locating relatives, finding out where the shelters were, what kind of contractors were in the area where people could get some help for the flood impact that devastated their homes. But again, the program grew. In 1975, it developed into a full-blown after-hours crisis service, which incorporated mental health services for acute issues, and for drug and alcohol, for child abuse, reports of child abuse and neglect, reports of elder abuse and neglect. And through the years, it just continued to grow. It's, unlike so many businesses that have been around for 40-plus years, each year showed a significant increase in the number of calls that we get. Now what's happened with Helpline, which is our signature program, it's really only a portion of what we do at Family Service. But what's happened in the last couple of years is that we got the permission from the PUC to use 211 across the state. And 211 is like 911. It's just a 3-digit number as opposed to calling the 10-digit number for Helpline. So people can call, and we just initiated just last month texting to 211. So people can now text their concerns or their issues, and we can provide assistance to them. But we continue to expand, we continue to innovate, and that's kind of been the history of Family Services, again, through the years, that we've always looked at what was needed in the community. We targeted those needs with the help of sound volunteers from the community, and then we would address or create programs to help address those needs. But in addition to Helpline, we have a guardianship program for people who are generally elderly but maybe younger and may have some developmental issues and not able to care for themselves. So we have guardians who will go out and make sure that their medical needs are met, make sure that their finances are secured. And we do a lot with children at risk. On both sides of the table, if you will, both the dependency side for foster care and also for children who've been involved in the juvenile justice system and need to be reunified to the community in a positive way.
And what area do you serve roughly?
Most of our programs cover either Luzerne, Wyoming, in Lackawanna County, but our helpline program over the last couple of years, we've expanded it to 17 counties. So we have 211 available, or the helpline number that goes all the way out to Williamsport and then all the way out to Stroudsburg and as far down as Northumberland County.
And every year, you host a family conference that takes on an issue that's very important in our community. And tell us a little bit about this year's.
Sure. This year we decided on suicide. And the reason that we decided that, and this is selected by a committee, it's called our Friends Committee, and these are the folks that I referenced earlier with some very committed and insightful community volunteers. We decided on a topic, and the first couple years we did veterans issues, trauma in military families, and then we expanded through, or changed through the year as we do. We change the theme each year. And this year we felt that suicide was something that needed to be addressed in Luzerne County because of the high numbers that are experienced here.
And we were talking before we went on air about the fact that we're just talking about suicide. I mean, I remember years and years ago, well, not that long ago really, families didn't talk about suicide. Is that in itself, Mike, or Denise or Karen, is that in itself an accomplishment, that society in general is talking about it publicly?
Yeah. I think it is. Yeah, absolutely is right.
I think what's important about the approach that we're taking and Denise and Kathy both sit on this committee to develop the agenda and the topics that we're going to be discussing. And I think one of the things that's important is that this is a positive approach to suicide prevention. You know, as is in the title, hope and healing for the community. And that's, I think, one way to help people to start talking about suicide, and especially the survivors of suicide, to talk about the hope and the healing and the positive aspects of it.
And this year, too, Pennsylvania passed a law in January that educators have to have 4 hours of suicide prevention education in every 5 years. And schools were, I don't know, before the VA, schools were so difficult to get into to speak about suicide at all, even though, and I know that you're going to put up some facts, even though it's the second leading cause of death, they didn't want to talk about it. So now they have to. And so that's a big step.
Well, I think what happened was when I started way back in mental health, the idea was if you brought up suicide to someone, you might plant the idea.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so even mental health professionals were kind of worried about talking about it because it may incite someone to become suicidal, which is a myth, not true.
That's why when Mike called me and said that they were going to do the suicide topic for their conference, I was thrilled, absolutely thrilled, because it is the time, and we've learned so much more too. I mean, there's still a lot more to learn and research, but we've learned so much more. So even clinicians that have been therapists for years can benefit by an update of what we've found since then.
Positively.
And this conference, who is it open to? Is
It's open to professionals and the general community. I mean, we will be offering CEUs for social workers, CLEs for attorneys, Act 48 credits for teachers, and for marriage and family counselors as well. And we're also just opening up to the community somebody who maybe doesn't have a background in social work or in human services, but wants to learn. Maybe they've had a family member who has threatened suicide, or a family member who has completed a suicide. This is open to the community as well.
And that's what we had talked about in the conference planning, is that it's also, there's so many things. I think it's going to be hard to whittle it down, but for people who've lost someone to suicide, they need a lot of support, because it's still a topic that people don't know what to say to someone who lost someone, and so they do need a lot of support. So there's so many different areas that are going to be touched by this conference.
And I know you have a broad topic of the number of topics you're going to be covering during the conference. And for people that are watching, what are some of the warning signs that they should be looking out for if they think a family member or loved one maybe have some suicidal thoughts? What should they look for? Whether it's
I'll start. And
sure.
we can go. There's some universal things to look for, but there's also some specific things for younger people and older adults. and younger, but yet it's a lot of the same symptoms. Teenagers and older adults, mood swings, if you see a change in someone, if they're usually going out with their friends, once again, teenagers and older adults, and all of a sudden they're isolating themselves or withdrawing from their friends. Sleep problems, I think, is a really big one. Huge, yes. Just very, more negative than usual. Just very hopeless, saying things like, oh, what does it matter? It doesn't matter. I'm not going to have to worry about this much longer. And as that progression of suicidal thinking goes on, I think they get even stronger in their statements, too.
Does it give them control by, if you're in that situation? Because a lot of times, and you know, the sad part about this business we're in as journalists, we will go to a death investigation, and you can and when we find out it's a suicide's a family personal tragedy, it's not really a news story per se, but really, because no one talks about it, it's a tragedy with the family, but there's so much, seems to be so much blame to go around. The family saying, well, what didn't I know? Or, you know, they're angry at the person. Why didn't they talk to me about it?
Right. And they do. The family is left. And I say the veterans that I work with, please know that the depression that you're feeling doesn't go away when you die. It gets passed on to your family.
Yes.
Who truly, truly spend a lifetime wondering what did they miss, what could they have done, you know, feeling guilty and shame. And plus the fact is, if you look in obituaries, you'll see it's not mentioned, suicide. You know, it's very rarely mentioned.
And Denise, you work with veterans every day, and you were mentioning before the show suicide among veterans. It's just very high.
It's high. 22 a day is the number that's out there. About 20%, truly about 20% of the total number of the suicides in the country are veterans. Not only the current OEF, OIF, OND guys and girls, but Vietnam, even Korean. When I first started the VA, the first 2 suicides that I was involved with were both World War II veterans. Yeah, so it happens unfortunately across age, across conflicts, across service.
And are there risk factors different than, you know, what are some, if a veteran, what are we looking at? Something.
Some are, well, there's a lot of universal, as Kathy said, but also with the veterans having PTSD, depression, bipolar disorder, those types of things, anger, increased anger. There's a lot of road rage we see amongst the veterans with PTSD, increased alcohol and drug use. Unfortunately, our veterans, huge struggle with prescription medication. They're coming back a lot of times addicted because carrying all that heavy equipment and stuff. They've got injuries that they're getting started on, you know, pain medication, and right away, you know, we're heading for a problem.
I imagine, though, them also being very proud people, that it's hard to.
Stigma remains a problem. You know, they're proud. You know, we always say it takes a lot of courage to ask for help. You know, it's the courage of a warrior to ask for help.
And you were talking again also about the fact male and female. You were saying the rates are higher. Males take their own life more than females.
Right, completing suicide.
And what's the belief? What's what's the reason why for that?
Well, the method is, you know, the number one method is by gunshot. Veterans, of course, who's better knowing how to use a gun? So naturally, 60% or more are through gun. Females typically overdose more. That's what we see, and we've been seeing that pretty much. However, female veterans are more likely to use guns or hanging, either one.
But in general,
the more violent methods are used by
More lethal.
right?
but in general, what do the information show? Why do males kill themselves more? Not just
There's
veterans,
a lot
in
of
general.
theories on that.
Yeah.
A lot of theories, nothing proven. But recently I read a really good article that women are more social creatures. If I'm upset, I talk to friends. I'm more likely to ask for help or go for help, where men usually don't as much as women do.
I can see that. Being a
Yeah.
man, I can really
Yeah.
see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, men tend to be more closeted, you know, and that's again one of the messages that we want to get out to people through this broadcast, but also through the conferences, that there is help out there, and that's important that people realize that. There are a variety of resources. Certainly, you know, the accessibility through dialing 211. But there are mandated mental health centers that are open 24/7 in every county across the state, and they're available to help people who are in mental health crisis. The veterans toll-free number is available specifically for veterans to call, and you know, that's important. And it's not just the number to call when somebody is in crisis. But there are support groups. There is a survivor support group that's run through Catholic Social Services that is important as well.
We have those numbers that we are showing during this program, and we will also have those numbers available for you on pahomepage.com under our Newsmakers link. We are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will continue our conversation today on the Family Service Association upcoming conference on suicide prevention. You are watching Newsmakers. We are a proud recipient of 2 Pennsylvania Association of Broadcasters Awards for Excellence in Public Affairs Programming. Newsmakers will return right after this. Welcome back to Newsmakers. Jayne and Bugda along with Andy Mehalshick. Our guests today are Kathy Wallace, Denise Carey, and Michael Zimmerman. We are talking about suicide prevention in an upcoming conference that's going to be held November 20th at Genetti's in Wilkes-Barre, hosted by the Family Service Association. When we were talking about the different groups who this will touch, and families can attend the conference, people in the healthcare profession, we also want to talk now about another topic that you're going to be covering during the conference, which is young people. Sadly, you know, you think there's a group that has everything to live for.
Yeah.
What would give a young person suicidal thoughts?
Once again, we're talking theories, and one of, let me just say, bullying does not cause suicide, but bullying, the theory is, when it starts at a younger age, a young person may think, I can't go on with this, and they think of suicide. And there's other factors. If they've had a suicide in their family, it's more in their minds as a way to stop that emotional pain. But they may not do anything, but the more they think about it, and the more they think about it, it seems that that's the only answer for them. And what we call it, tunnel vision, that they don't look at all the help, once again, that is out there. They don't share it. They share it maybe with each other. And that's what we need to do, is teach our kids how to help each other, because they don't go to an adult, they don't go to a teacher, but they may tell someone. And that child needs how to know that they're not going to get in trouble. And teenagers are more impulsive, where older adults plan their suicides, and there's a higher risk of completing a suicide, where younger kids are just more impulsive. They're harder because of the symptoms, I think, because a lot of things you'll say, well, that's just a teenager. And so many times we'll get calls and we'll say, you know, and the people say, how do you know that someone is really suicidal, or it's just a, you know, thought, and it's really to ask them. That's really,
I was going to say, how do you begin that conversation with someone? How do you begin that if you're a parent or a family member?
I think if you have concerns, if you've seen some of the symptoms that we've talked about, and again, you know, the symptoms in, generally speaking, I don't want to say lumped together, but more than one. You know, I know years ago there used to be a theory that if you listen to heavy rock music, that you know, that increased the odds. Well, I can tell you, I've been listening to heavy rock music since the '60s. And you know,
How long back? The 60s?
The 60s, yeah, that's true. Jimi Hendrix. You know, but you've got to look at the symptoms in, again, I don't want to say clusters, but in groups, more than one. And you know, I think you just need to come out, and if you're seeing some of these symptoms, and you need to start the conversation. You know, ask the child if they've thought about hurting themselves, if they've thought about ending their life. Or ask your spouse for that, whether it's an adult or a youth. I think that's important for opening up the conversation, because that then can lead the door for help.
Yes.
and I'm taking the DeLorean back 30 years, maybe 20, would that, as we said at the outset of the program, some might be afraid to start the conversation because then they'll say, again, am I planting that seed where there is no seed there?
Yeah. I was thinking when Mike was talking, how many times we've heard from adults and educators, oh, I don't want to bring it up, I don't want to bring it up. And we know that that's the #1 myth, I think, because people want to be stopped. It's not, and it's, you hear it all the time, but it's true. And what we know from survivors of suicide attempts. And they'll say, you know, it's not that I wanted to die, and I wanted to tell someone, but I didn't. I think a lot of people are afraid, too, that they're just going to be shot right off to a hospital. Right. And so many people, I've been so fortunate, and all of us, in talking to people who have more serious mental health problems. And that's how we learn. You know, it's not as though I wanted to die. I just thought I really didn't have any choice. A big thing, and this is a warning sign, too, is my family would be better off without me. Mm-hmm. We hear that a lot. You know, you probably hear that as veterans.
Oh, sure.
All the time.
It's distorted.
Yes.
You know, in that moment of suicidal thinking, it's only about a 4 to 5 minute phenomenon.
Yeah.
And all they're doing for 5 minutes is weighing it. Should I do it? Should I not do it? Should I do it? And they're really struggling with what to do. They really, like Kathy said, they're very ambivalent. It's not like, okay, we're going to do this right this minute.
Yeah.
Another way to maybe open up the conversation would be, you know, to a child or to a teenager, you know, I know that your grades have been gone down. I know that you don't want to go out with your friends too much. I heard this person talking about suicide one time, and they were saying that that was a sign, you know, and other people might think about suicide. Did that ever cross your mind? You know, so it becomes like not so threatening and not so scary.
That's what I say. Every time we do a program on suicide prevention, I'll say to the group we're doing, this is an absolute wonderful opportunity. Go home and say, hey, I was at a program today about suicide prevention. And I think that's going to be one of the things at the conference is really going to help people understand is not to be afraid. We're also going to talk about a lot of resources that are out there. The Society for the Prevention of Teen Suicide, on their website, they have a short video for parents. It's called Not My Kid, and it teaches you. There's a lot of resources on the internet that teach you how to talk to someone.
And talk about the effect of suicide on a family member. I know you brought that up briefly.
Yeah.
The effects on...
Devastating. I don't even think there's a word. It's worse than devastating.
It is.
And everybody has a different... For a mom, we talked about guilt. I think mothers, no matter what happens, they always think they should protect their children. Right. And in our support group, a lot of times moms will say, I didn't even go to the store for 3 months because I felt like people were pointing at me. Right. Dads, they're supposed to take care of their family. It's just real, and as Denise said, it doesn't stop the pain, it just passes it on to someone else.
Yeah. Paralyzing.
Yeah.
Paralyzing. They really feel that they should have stopped it in some way, should have seen it, you know, and they didn't care for them.
And what do you say to those families? What's the recourse? How do you help them if they have that opinion?
You let them talk.
They need counseling?
You let them talk.
Obviously, what do you tell them?
Let me put in a plug for support groups. Catholic Social Services has one down here. Northeast Suicide Prevention Initiative has one in Lackawanna County. It's so different. Even going to a one-on-one therapist, it's so different when you hear from people who've already gone through it. And they'll say, gosh, as I can remember that, you know, that I wouldn't go outside for a while.
Yeah.
Now, someone watching the program right now, and we've been showing the numbers up there, if it's a family member that has concerns, could they also call these hotlines to ask?
Yeah, and if it gets confusing, again, to just note the 211, if it gets confusing whether you should be talking to a crisis interventionist, whether you should be talking to an ongoing therapist, or whether you're just looking for information referral, call 211, and we will put you in touch with the right people. It's just, again, it's just an easy number to call, and they have the information there. In fact, if you go on the helpline website, which is helpline-nepa.info,
Which we'll have on PA homepage.
Good. And there is a list of the different crisis clinics available throughout Northeast PA. So the information is there, the help is there. Make sure you call and reach out to someone.
Absolutely. In the Veterans Crisis Line, that 1-800-273-TALK number, veterans or active duty military, press 1. Your call automatically goes to a veteran crisis worker in Canandaigua, New York, who has access to charts even to do it. There's been over 6 million calls to that line since 2007.
Wow.
Quick question. Mom or dad are watching this program right now. You know, I'm a dad, you guys are parents. We know our kids, we really do, to a point. But there's also their own people inside. You're trying to figure out, after hearing this conversation, I think there's some signs here. You know, we talked about before about how to open up the conversation. Who can they call? Can they get a resource to say, listen, I want to open this conversation. I'm very concerned. I can't say for sure my daughter or son's suicidal, but there's some changes here.
They can
You
call
can call
that
that number.
number
That
and
same
talk
number?
to someone,
Number
and they'll
and
help
the
walk
211 or the
family
talk.
member
Yep.
through it.
Yep, absolutely.
We have about a minute left. I want to remind everybody of the upcoming conference. It is in November. We have the information here on your screen where to call. We'll also have the information on our website. We encourage family members, health professionals, members of the community to attend. We'll also have the list of all the topics they will be covering that day. Again, it's November 20th. All the information on pahomepage.com. Kathy, Denise, and Mike, thank you so much for being with us today. For Andy Mehalshick and everyone behind the scenes, I'm Jayne Bugda. Thank you for making Newsmakers part of your day. Again, information on today's show and other shows can be found on pahomepage.com under the Newsmakers link.